Hello everyone and welcome back to my channel. I've been a little bit absent for the last month or so, both in terms of my channel and a little bit from the pets community. It's been a mixture of stuff in my real life and also just the fact that I got a new laptop. So I've had to set it up and it's proved a little more time consuming than I expected it to be because I actually have accumulated quite a lot of different utilities and things to do with pets, and I had to set them all up and transfer everything over, so that took a little while, and I finally finished a few days ago. I'm hoping that it's easier to edit videos now and also that the audio quality is a little bit better. Any feedback on that is very, very welcome. I would love to hear what you think so that I can make further improvements if I can. As soon as I was done setting everything up, I really wanted to hex something. I'd been itching to hex something for ages anyway, and I knew that I had something outstanding from this thread here, which is my sort of hexing service that I think I also mentioned in my last video. I think that was my last video. So today I was going to be looking at the prompt from Autumn, and Autumn suggested something inspired by a Kirin and plant/flowers. Plants and flowers is obviously self-explanatory, but I had no idea what a Kirin was. So I went and Googled that and I found out that a Kirin is this creature from Eastern mythology. Kirin specifically is from Japanese mythology, but there's related concepts in Chinese and Korean mythology. This on my screen right now is, I believe, the Chinese version. And they're all kind of similar. They're often compared to the Western unicorn concept. They symbolize similar things, and they're this spirit chimeric creature that combines elements of deer or horned animals with sort of dragon-like features. The idea was to take that and plants, flowers kind of concepts, and then I also thought that I would inject something a little bit different into it, which was autumn, as in the season, and also this was prompted by autumn, so I thought it would be kind of nice to do something that was also inspired by that. So I'm going to merge the ideas all together and hopefully create something that Autumn likes. I will go ahead now and show you the sped up version of that and also voice over with my thoughts, and then I will see you at the end with the actual finished product and you can meet that creature in real time. As usual, I start my hex with my hexing base, which is really just a minimally altered Oshi, and then I made some changes to the scales. My original idea was that it would be something quite deer-like, so I was thinking quite elegant and kind of tall. I wanted it to have a little bit more of a deer-like face. I didn't want it to be too delicate at the same time, so I wanted it to have almost a Roman nose, kind of a strong look to it. I actually felt kind of rusty coming back to hexing after such a long break, so I didn't want to do anything too ambitious. I wanted to stick to something that would be fairly simple to execute and just go with the flow and see what I came up with. Here you can see I'm just shaping the face. I was anticipating that things might clip, so I was trying to make sure that that wouldn't be an issue. Just fiddling a bit with the ears, which obviously I omitted most of the ear balls, so I was planning to make them from scratch later, which indeed I did. I often like to color the base a little bit with alternating colors so it's easier to make out where all the balls are. What you see me doing here is I added a bit of chest fuzz, but you'll see later that I changed my mind about that and I turned it into a kind of wither bump instead. I often try to make chest fuzz or ruffs around the neck and stuff like that, and I almost always end up not really liking them and changing them. Not sure why I don't learn. This is me making a kind of beard. Kirins are in some ways similar to unicorns. Unicorns are often depicted with beards as well. I was gonna make it asymmetrical, but I ended up not liking what that looked like. I'm just evening everything out now, making sure that it does look symmetrical overall. You'll notice if you watch me hexing often that I like to make sure that everything is labeled and clear. I used to not bother with that very much, but as I've gained experience and I've made more and more complicated things, I've realized the value in it. So this is my first attempt at the ears. I was thinking of trying to make something deer-like. You'll see that what ends up coming out is a little more like kind of a gremlin-like outline, and I then change it because that really wasn't what I was aiming for. When I usually hex things, I take inspiration from nature and I try to make sure that when you look at it from different angles, it kind of makes sense and it's not just 2D, if that makes sense. But with this one, I actually wanted some of it to look kind of more rigid, if you will. A bit more like that statue I showed at the beginning of the Kirin. Kind of more like the art I've seen from mythology. I always love mirroring ears because I actually forgot to mirror them there, but I renumbered the bowls, and I always love doing this part because it's like this magical thing that then it's there. You just connect the lines quickly and it's done. Obviously you can connect the lines in Deus Hex or in Lines Pro if that's what you use, but I kind of like to connect them in Pet Workshop because you're less likely to make mistakes there. I'm definitely planning to do a tutorial really soon on mirroring because it's something that comes up a lot, just mirroring ad bowls and how to do that, how to calculate the numbers and so on. So this is where I changed that chest fuzz into the withers instead. Okay, now the antlers are coming into existence. So with the antlers, I didn't want to go with something that looked like real antlers. Kirin are usually depicted with horns. For me, the point of the antlers was that they would be kind of plant-like, and they would be the part of a hex that would be fulfilling the kind of plant requirement. So what I really wanted was something that would look a bit like a branch. Real antlers don't really go downwards like this. They don't curl downwards. But that wasn't the point. They weren't intended to look like real antlers. So they branch instead, and they're a bit more tree-like or branch-like. Here I was just thinking about when I mirrored them, if they're going to end up clipping into each other. I didn't want them to overlap. I'm just renumbering them. This is a little bit tricky, if I'm honest, keeping track of what the numbers were meant to be. I didn't do it in the most organized way. Again, this is something I think I'll go over in a future tutorial, probably in the very near future. I have it planned maybe a couple of videos from now. And there you go, as if by magic. And this time I decided to actually also do the lines in Des Hex because I wanted them to be the same, the connections be the same, because if I did end up using textures or something like that, I didn't want them to look drastically different either side. Again, when I'm hexing things inspired by nature, often I do make things asymmetrical. But with antlers, they are typically roughly symmetrical, and also this was modeled after a somewhat stylized creature in the first place, so I wanted to stick to that very structured, symmetrical kind of idea. So in a moment now you're going to see that I'm going to add little, I don't know if you want to call them clumps of leaves, and they're not going to be symmetrical. This is my first in-game look. I omitted the whiskers. I cut out the bit where I checked the chart. I do still have to check the chart for bull numbers. Especially with things like whiskers, I never remember what they are. So I opened up Lines Pro for that. And here I am making the nose shine. Hopefully anyway. I also toyed with the idea of giving it cloven hooves and things like that, but in the end I decided that I wanted to stick to something kind of simple, because like I said before, I was getting a little bit rusty and I just wanted to get back into it. Notice that I annotate my hexes with things like full sometimes, or you'll see me sometimes use the acronym LOB, which stands for line over ball. And that's just for me to remember later that I want to change the way that the lines are rendered, specifically because Pet Workshop undoes that. And I don't want to have to keep doing it over and over again, so I just label it and then later I can mess around with that as the last step. This is about when I decided that that elegant tall look was probably not gonna really look how I wanted to look, and I decided to bulk things up a little bit. The ears were a bit of a pain to position because I used the line over ball rendering for the ears, which I often do to make the outlines more distinct and to give them more shape. But when you do that, they can sometimes appear in front of other things that are composed of balls, such as the antlers. And in this case, I didn't want the ears to appear in front of the antlers, so I was just trying to make sure that there was clear separation between them. Just preempting that problem in game so that I wouldn't have to fix it later. And I wanted to give the tail a more fluffy appearance, or like it had fronds coming off of it, I guess. I toyed with the idea of actually making it also look like it was branching, but I didn't want to make it look so solid. So instead I went for this kind of hairy look, I guess. And this is where you'll see that I didn't just make one line of them, even though from the side it would have looked just as good with just one line of these fronds. I made them asymmetrical and then moved them around until they looked how I wanted them to look. Now this is again something I could have done with more detail in it, but I didn't want to. I wanted to keep it quite simple. I have another hex where I've used a very similar technique on the tail, and I loved how it came out in that case, and it was more detailed than this, but with this I wanted something a bit simpler, more stylized, sticking with the original theme and kind of that statuesque inspiration. This is where the plant element starts to really be completed, I guess. These are those clumps of leaves, maybe, that are the last to fall off the tree. And I am sticking to autumnal colors, so you'll see that I use oranges and yellows and pinks and reds. What I'm doing here is that I make the main clump off the head, but then I make sub-clumps from the original clump, if that makes sense. And that just makes it easier to move everything around and get it into the position that I want it. At this point, I'm just going with the colors that I think will look good, but you will see that later for the final product. I do add a texture, so I end up using colors that can be textured only. I think for customs I might vary it. I might use some different textures. I spent quite a lot of time messing with these and making sure that the position was how I wanted it to be. Caps lock. Oops. Still getting used to my new keyboard, so sometimes I make mistakes. And the other thing is that I didn't have an actual mouse with my previous laptop, so I'm kind of still getting used to that too. Obviously I've used the mouse many times before, but for a couple of years now I've had a laptop without one, so it's been a bit different switching back to a mouse. I'm going to start recoloring it now. And even though I didn't give it hooves, I wanted to give the idea of hooves. So I made the toes black. This is when I was toying with the idea of the tail being kind of branch-like, but I ended up changing it. I had a bit of trouble making sure that the beard stood out enough. Here I'm adding some paint pools. I want to make sure that the transition from the brown to the dusty color isn't really abrupt. So I'm just putting some paint pools in to give a more natural transition, and then I'll mirror them in Deus Ex. And then I changed the paw pads. I considered just removing the paw pads again to be reminiscent of hooves, but I decided that since I was keeping the toes, I should just keep the paw pads too. And just make them a nice dark pink. Just anchoring. Making sure my outlines are rendered how I want them to be. And my lines. Again, this is something that actually changed a few times. These little details can just add something of like a finishing touch to a hex. And I think for the most part you can almost not tell a difference, but I can, and I wanted to make sure they looked how I wanted them to look. tweaking those antler branches a little bit more now. I wanted to make them just a little bit more 3D. So again, a lot of tweaking of the shape went on at this point. Again, these are little details that if you're not working on the hex, you maybe don't even really notice, but for me, because I'm working on it, I see them and they kind of bother me, so I feel it's worth tweaking even if no one else is going to care really. I do think I've gotten a bit better with not being too much of a perfectionist with things like this though, because I've been known to change things endlessly and still not be happy. It's just making sure that it's mirrored. Again, tweaking the position of those clumps, because those are not symmetrical, I can't just mirror them. Just fixing the colors because I changed the cheek colors. At this point I felt like I was coming quite close to the end. I wanted to play around with changing the beard definition. But then when I saw it in game, I really wasn't too much of a fan of that. It just kind of looked like a squiggly mess. So I went back to having it be cream without the outlines. Sometimes it is just trial and error. You have to try things you think are going to look good, and then if they don't look good, they don't look good. I'm always saying to people who have just started out with hexing not to be afraid to try things. Because it can be a little bit daunting when you start out. You feel like you're going to break everything, and that the smallest change might be a disaster, but it really isn't. Just safe backups. And then I wanted to make sure that the kitten would reflect the adult as well, because up until now the kitten was quite different looking. And I just made sure that the tongue was also moved, because often if you've moved things around a little bit and you forget the tongue, it's can end up in a very different position to the rest of the body, and it just looks kind of odd in some animations. So now I was quite happy with where I was at. And I just thought it needed some definition and some tweaks to the coloring mainly. The pattern I was going for was kind of deer-like, I guess. But simple. I toyed with the idea of making them look patchy with paintballs, and then I decided that I would go with a texture instead. And that's why I changed all the colors. Well, not all of them, but I changed the ones that were not texturable to a texturable color. And then I went over the textures already in the file to make sure that it was all coherent. And of course I used the muzzle texture. Again, this is something that I might change for customs. I had a little crash because I zoomed in too close. That can happen with Pet Workshop, but if you just exit out, usually it's fine, just carries on working just fine. But yeah, it doesn't like if you zoom too much. I moved all the toes and fingers back closer to the paw. Again, the kind of tweaks that probably nobody else would have noticed, but for me, it just would have bothered me. again with the zooming in. So there's a reason you haven't ever seen that in my previous videos, and it's because I didn't have a scroll wheel on my mouse, whereas I do now, and it makes me tempted to zoom in further. I don't really think about the crashing issue, and then I end up crashing the Pet Workshop. Hopefully I'll get used to that, and I'll stop doing it. Okay, I think we're nearing to the end now. So here we are with Kirin, with this autumnal background in the playpen. I'm quite happy with the end result for this. As I said, I was not trying to do anything too ambitious this time. I wanted to stick to something quite simple to ease myself back into hexing. It's kind of amazing how even after just not hexing for a month, which probably seems like a short time to most people, I actually felt quite rusty and out of it. I think part of it was also the change of equipment because of the new laptop, but I definitely am back into it now, and hopefully you'll be seeing a lot more videos from me going forwards. It should also be a lot easier to edit them now because my old laptop really struggled. It crashed a lot when I was editing, and the audio quality was also terrible. I hope that is much improved. I think there's still more I can do to make it even better, so I will try to do that. I have a lot of videos planned going forwards. I think part of why I do this is obviously I started out just wanting to help people understand how to hex, but I hope that you also feel inspired to try things out and to not be afraid to make mistakes, like seeing this process that I go through and how I will have some idea in the beginning and then it ends up changing completely, and that's okay. I hope that that helps people feel a bit more comfortable trying stuff and, you know, getting it wrong, trial and error, and you still end up with something in the end. And obviously some of the time I don't end up with anything that I show you because it's something I don't like at all, but for the most part I end up with something reasonable and I enjoy the process, so that's why I do it. And I hope that you do too. So anyway, I guess that's all there is to be said. Kirin is done, and I will hopefully be doing some more stuff for spooky season and for autumn, and then of course it's Christmas after that, so this is where the really busy part of the year starts for the pets community with hexing, and I am really excited. Anyway, I will see you in the next video. I hope you enjoyed, and please do comment and let me know what you thought.